The automatic doors to Mercy General hissed open, and Patrolman Cody Rains walked in like the building belonged to him. His uniform was crisp, his jaw tight, his eyes already hunting for someone to punish. At the nurse's station, Alana Brooks stood with a chart pressed to her chest. Black scrubs, hair pulled back, a name badge that read RN. Her hands were steady, but her shoulders were tense in the way of a person who learned to be careful around men like him. Rain slapped his palm on the counter, hard enough to rattle the pens. "Where is he?" he snapped. "The guy you're hiding." Alana didn't flinch. She looked up. Neutral expression, voice controlled. "I don't know who you were looking for, officer, but you can't be here in the ICU corridor without clearance." Rains leaned in, close enough that his breath hit her face. His voice dropped, intimate and ugly. "Don't officer me like you run this place. You people think a badge is optional when it's convenient." A few heads turned. A resident froze with a clipboard. Someone at the desk pretended to type. Alana kept her tone even. "Sir, this is a hospital. If you're looking for a patient, I can contact security or the charge nurse, but you cannot threaten staff." Rain's eyes flicked to her badge. He read her name like it insulted him. "Alana Brooks," he repeated slowly. "You gonna tell me what to do in my own city?" "This isn't about a city. It's about patient care." He smiled like he'd found the weak point. "Patient care," he echoed. "You care so much. You gonna tell me where the suspect is?" "I watched him run into this hospital. I watched you people close ranks. Think you can hide him because it's a medical facility." Alana took a slow breath. "We have an obligation to provide emergency treatment. If someone came in injured, we stabilize them. That's the law." Rain's hand shot out, and he seized the front of her scrub top, twisting the fabric at her collar. The station went silent, like the room had been vacuumed. "Don't quote law to me," he hissed. "I am the law out there." Alana's chart fell. Papers scattered. A pen rolled off the counter and clacked against the tile. A security guard at the end of the hall started forward, uncertain, like he'd been trained to de-escalate but not to challenge. Alana's eyes flicked briefly toward the guard, then back to Rains. Her voice stayed low. "Let go of me." Rains tightened his grip. "Or what?" There was a brief pause, not fear. Calculation. Alana's chin lifted a fraction. "Or you'll regret it." Rains laughed, loud enough to fill the corridor. It wasn't humor. It was permission. He yanked her forward until her shoulder hit the edge of the counter. She grunted, involuntary. The sound snapped something, and the onlookers and intern gasped. A nurse whispered, "Stop." But no one moved fast enough. Rainey's turned his head slightly toward the crowd, voice rising. "This is what happens when you obstruct a police investigation. You want to be a hero? You want to play tough?" Elena's hands didn't strike him. They didn't claw. They stayed open, visible, disciplined-like. She knew exactly what any defensive motion would be called. Rains interpreted that restraint as surrender. He released her collar just to shove her. She stumbled backward, caught herself on the counter, then straightened. "Assaulting hospital staff is a felony in this state," she said. Her voice trembled on the last word, not from weakness, but from effort. Rains's eyes sharpened. "Now you're threatening me. I'm stating consequences. Consequences." He stepped in again. "You don't get to talk about consequences." He reached for her wrist, as if he intended to drag her somewhere private. Alana jerked back, just enough to break his grasp, and that was all he needed. Rainey's hand went to his cuffs. "That's it," he said, loud and triumphant. Resisting. The metal clicked open. Elena looked past him at the security guard who had finally come closer. "Sir, please call the charge nurse. And the hospital administrator. Right now." Rains shoved her arm up behind her back. She winced, face tightening, but she did not scream. The restraint in her body was disciplined, practiced. He slammed her against the wall beside the medication room. The impact made the glass panel rattle. "Stop," a nurse shouted, finally breaking the paralysis. Rains didn't look at her. His forearm pinned Alana's shoulder blade. His voice was calm now, colder. "You should have kept your mouth shut." His cuff snapped onto Alana's right wrist. He twisted her arm higher than necessary, pushing her toward the edge where pain becomes injury. Alana's breath hitched. Her eyes watered. But even then, her gaze was level. "Your body camera," she said through clenched teeth. "Make sure it's on." For the first time, Rains hesitated. His hand went to his chest, and then his mouth curled. "Oh, it's on. I want everyone to see you learn." He clicked the second cuff toward her left wrist. Alana's free hand moved not to strike, but to slip 2 fingers into her scrub pocket with the smallest motion. Something flat. Something smooth. A badge clip. A lanyard. Rains didn't notice, or he didn't care. He locked the second cuff. The chain between them tugged, short and unforgiving. "There," he said, and gave her arm another wrench for emphasis. "Now we're going to find your suspect, and if you don't cooperate, I'll put you in a cell with the rest of the trash." A doctor stepped out of the ICU doors, drawn by the commotion. Older, white hair, an exhaustion that looked permanent. "What is going on?" he demanded. Rains glanced at him, eyes hard. "Police business. Step back." "That's my nurse," the doctor snapped. "You're harming her." Rains turned fully, squaring his shoulders like he'd been waiting for a man with authority to challenge him. "You want to interfere? I'll arrest you too." The doctor's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at the crowd, at the cameras mounted in the hallway corners, at the security guard who still hadn't raised a hand. Rainey's knew exactly how alone people felt in moments like this. He fed on it. Alana's voice cut through, quiet. "Doctor, get back to your patients." The doctor stared at her, shocked. She met his eyes and gave a slight shake of her head. A warning, not a plea. He backed away, shaking with helpless anger. Rains jerked Alana forward. Her cuffed hands forced her posture awkwardly, shoulders pulled back. He marched her down the corridor, past patients' families, past a wall of framed donor names and polished floors that reflected her humiliation. The ICU doors swung as staff hurried out of the way. A woman holding a child pressed herself against the wall. The child's eyes widened. "Mom," the child whispered. Rains made sure they all saw. "See that?" he said loudly to no one in particular. "This is what happens when you help criminals." Alana's lips parted. She swallowed. She didn't beg. At the elevator, he punched the button with sharp jabs, impatient. The doors took too long. A nurse, young, shaking, stepped forward with her phone halfway raised. Rains's head snapped toward her like a predator hearing movement. "You filming?" The nurse froze. He moved on her so fast the crowd gasped. His hand shot out, slapped the phone from her grip. It skittered across the floor and slid under a bench. "You want to lose your license?" he barked, interfering with an arrest. The nurse's eyes filled with tears. She didn't move. Rains returned to Alana, satisfied. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. Inside, the air was too tight, too bright. The fluorescent lights flattened everything. Rainey's shoved Alana against the back wall and stood close in front of her, using his body to block the doorway view from the hallway cameras. He knew exactly where blind spots were. His voice dropped to a private growl. "You nurses think you're untouchable because you wear scrubs and cry about your job online." Alana stared at the space between his collar and his throat, refusing to meet his eyes. "You going to tell me where he is?" Rain said. "Or I'm going to make you regret today so bad you'll never step into a hospital again." The elevator started moving. The hum filled the silence. Alana finally looked up, and when she spoke, it was barely above the elevator's vibration. "You should step back." Rains grinned. "Or what?" The elevator passed the second floor. The numbers lit up above the door. Alana's breath steadied. "Or you'll make a mistake you can't walk away from." Rains leaned in closer, almost nose to nose. "You got a lawyer husband gonna come save you?" Something like a shadow crossed Alana's face. She didn't answer. The elevator dinged at the ground floor. The doors opened onto the main lobby, wide, crowded, a place built for visibility. Families, volunteers, a newsstand, a wall of windows showing the ambulance bay outside. A hospital administrator in a suit stood near the entrance with 2 security guards. His face was strained, jaw tight, like he'd been told a police officer was assaulting staff, and he still didn't know what to do. "Officer," the administrator called, voice shaking with forced authority. "You need to release her. We have footage. This is..." Rains walked right past him, dragging Alana like luggage. "Talk to my sergeant," he snapped over his shoulder. "She's obstructing." The administrator followed, panic flashing. "She's a nurse. She has patients. She's on shift. You cannot." Rains spun suddenly, face inches from the administrator. "Touch me again and I'll put you in cuffs too," he said. The administrator stumbled back, hands up. Alana's wrists were red now, the metal biting. She kept her head level as Rains hauled her through the lobby toward the ambulance bay doors. Outside, the winter air hit hard. The smell of exhaust, distant sirens. 2 ambulances sat parked. A gurney clattered in the distance. A paramedic paused, watching. Rainey's marched Alana toward his cruiser parked crooked near the emergency entrance, as if rules didn't apply to him even here. He opened the back door with a sharp yank. "Get in," he ordered. Alana didn't move. The smallest pause, and the world narrowed. Rains's face darkened. He loved moments when someone resisted. It gave him permission. "Get in," he repeated, slower. Alana's eyes shifted, not to him, but past him, toward the glass doors behind, toward something approaching. Footsteps. Measured. Not hurried. Not panicked. A man walked out of the hospital entrance like he belonged there, but not like staff. He wore a dark coat over a suit, tailored, the kind that made people unconsciously straighten. His hair was short, graying at the temples. His face was calm, but the calm of someone who had already decided. 2 other men flanked him half a step behind, both scanning, both with earpieces barely visible. Rains glanced over, annoyed. "Who the hell are you?" he barked. The man didn't answer immediately. His eyes went to Alana first. She finally allowed a sliver of emotion to show relief that she did not turn into weakness. It was the relief of a person who'd held the line long enough. The man's gaze moved to the cuffs, the reddened wrists, the way she was being positioned like prey. His jaw flexed once. Then he looked at Rains. "Let her go," he said. Rainey's laughed loud in the cold air. "You her husband? You want to join her? Because Alice, you will let her go," the man said again, and the words landed differently. Not anger. Authority. Rainey stepped closer, chest puffed. "This is an arrest. Back up before you get hurt." The man's hand went into his coat. Not fast, not threatening, just deliberate. He pulled out a leather credential case and opened it with one thumb, angling it so the light caught the seal. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Director's Office. Rainey's mouth opened slightly, then shut. His eyes darted, searching for a joke, a trick, a camera. You're, Rain stammered. The man's voice stayed level. Director Alana Brooks. Alana's last name on the badge suddenly mattered. The paramedic across the bay stopped moving entirely. One of the hospital's security guards took a step forward, suddenly brave. Rain swallowed. His grip tightened on Alana's arm out of instinct, like an animal holding prey when the forest goes quiet. Director Brooks' tone dropped lower. "Take the cuffs off," he said. "Now." Rain's pride fought for air. He forced a sneer. "This is local jurisdiction," he snapped. "You can't just walk in." One of the men behind Brooks stepped forward and held up his own credentials, fast and clear. Another lifted a phone, already on a call. A black SUV rolled into the ambulance bay like it had been waiting, tires crunching gravel. Another followed. The shape of the day changed. Raina's eyes flicked between them, panic beginning to show in the twitch at the corner of his mouth. "You don't know what happened," Rain said quickly, voice climbing. She was obstructing. She resisted. Alana spoke quietly. "My pocket." Director Brooks didn't look away from Rain's. "What?" Alana's cuffed hands shifted, clumsy. "My scrub pocket, left side." Brooks reached, fingers steady, and pulled out the object Alana had touched earlier. A small hospital-issued ID card clip. Behind it, a second card plane, unremarkable until it flipped, and the words became visible. DOJ Office of the Inspector General. Special Liaison. Alana Brooks. Rain stared, breathing shallow. The director's eyes hardened further, not surprised, just confirmed. "So you were warned," Brooks said to Rain's, voice like iron dragged slowly across stone. "In 2 ways. And you chose violence anyway." Rain's hand shook as he reached toward his belt pouch, pulling out his key. "Okay," he said, trying to smile, trying to turn it into a misunderstanding. "Okay, let's just talk." "She didn't say, she said let go," Brooks replied. "And you escalated." The keys rattled. Rains fumbled the cuff key against the lock. "Stop," Brooks said. Rains froze. "You don't get to touch her again," Brooks continued. "You step back." Rain's face flushed. I'm trying to step back. Rain stepped away, hands half raised, like surrender, like performance. One of the men with the earpiece broad shoulders, no expression, moved in and took the keys from Rain's without asking. His hand was calm, controlled, professional. He unlocked the cuffs with 2 precise turns. Alana's hands dropped. She rubbed her wrists once, slow. The red marks were already swelling. Rains exhaled, still trying to keep footing. Director, he started, voice slick. With respect, I didn't know. If she had identified herself. She identified herself as staff doing her job, Brooks said, and you assaulted her. The words assaulted her landed like a stamp. Rain's eyes flicked toward the hospital doors. He looked like he wanted the crowd back, wanted his familiar territory of bystanders who wouldn't intervene. But the crowd had changed too. People were gathering. Phones were coming out again, cautiously at first, then boldly when they saw federal presence. A volunteer in a red vest whispered into her own phone, trembling with excitement or fear. Brooks nodded once to the agent behind him. Get the hospital security director. Now. Preserve all footage. Every camera, every hallway, every elevator. The agent spoke into a mic at his collar. Rainey's voice spiked. You can't just seize hospital footage. You need. Brooks cut him off. Inspector General liaison request. And if you obstruct it, you will be arrested for interference with a federal investigation. Rains blinked, stunned by the speed at which his world was turning. Alana finally spoke, voice steady despite the pain. He turned his body to block the elevator camera, she said quietly. He knew where the blind spot was. Rains snapped his head toward her. That's a lie. Alana looked him in the eye now, unflinching. You said you wanted everyone to see me learn. Rain's throat bobbed. Brooks' gaze didn't leave him. Did you know who she is? He asked, even though the answer was already written in Rains' expression. Rains tried to muster anger. She's your wife. That doesn't mean, it means you made your choice, Brooks replied, and now you live inside it. The black SUV door opened. 2 more agents stepped out, their posture unmistakable. Not aggressive, certain. One held a small tablet already playing a video. A clip from inside the hospital lobby. The moment Rains slapped the nurse's phone, the moment he threatened the administrator, audio crisp enough to capture his words. He heard his own voice. You want to lose your license? His face shifted as if he'd been struck. Where'd you get that? He demanded. The agent didn't answer him. He didn't have to. Brooks spoke softly, almost conversational. That's not even the hallway footage yet, he said. That's what people captured in public. Rains took a step back without meaning to. His hand drifted toward his holster as if the old instincts could still save him. The agent's eyes sharpened. A subtle repositioning happened around him, angles closing, lines of fire eliminated, control asserted without anyone raising a voice. Rains noticed. He jerked his hand away, palms visible. I didn't do anything, he said quickly. This is being blown up. Alana's face tightened, and in that small movement was every other nurse and patient and family member who had been swallowed by someone else's badge. You slammed me into a wall, she said. You twisted my arm until it nearly dislocated. You threatened to put me in a cell with trash, and you did it in a hospital. Rains tried to laugh again, but it came out thin. Come on, that's enough, Brooks said. He looked at the agent with the tablet. Call it in. The agent nodded once and spoke into his mic. Subject is on scene. Badge number and name confirmed. We have probable cause on assault, unlawful detention, civil rights violations under color of law. Requesting immediate coordination with U.S. Attorney's Office and State AG. Rain's face drained of color. He looked around wildly, as if expecting his sergeant to appear, as if expecting the familiar blue wall to reform. Instead, he saw hospital staff watching with a new posture. No longer hunched. No longer pretending to type. The administrator stood with his hands clasped, shaking, eyes locked on Rains like a man watching a predator finally get trapped. A paramedic muttered. About time, under his breath. Rain's voice rose, desperate. This is insane, I'm a cop, you can't just. Brooks stepped closer. The space between them tightened. Brooks' voice lowered. You used your position to hurt someone who couldn't fight back without being punished for it, he said. You chose her because you thought no one would protect her. Rains swallowed hard. I didn't know. Brooks' eyes held him. That's the point. A siren approached, not fast, not chaotic, intentional. A state police cruiser rolled in first, followed by an unmarked vehicle with a state seal on the door. Rains's eyebrows lifted with sudden hope. Good, he said quickly. Finally, someone with sense. Tell them this is federal overreach. Tell them. The door of the unmarked car opened. A woman stepped out in a dark blazer, her hair pulled back tight. Her expression was flat, professional, and severe. She walked straight toward Brooks and held out her hand. Special Counsel Dana Pierce, she said. Attorney General's office. We were briefed 10 minutes ago. We're initiating a parallel state investigation. Rains's mouth hung open. Pierce didn't look at him. She looked at Alana. Ma'am, Pierce said, voice softer by 1 degree. Are you injured? Alana's eyes flicked to her wrists, then to the ache in her shoulder. I will need imaging, she said, and documentation. Pierce nodded once. You will have it. Rains suddenly seemed to understand the scale. Federal, state, hospital footage, witnesses, public video. His voice cracked. This is political, he blurted. This is because she's married to. Pierce finally turned to him. Her eyes were cold. This is because you assaulted a nurse in a hospital, she said, and because you did it in uniform. Rain's throat worked. I'm going to call my union. You can call whoever you like, Pierce replied. You will be interviewed under oath. Rains's hands trembled. I want my lawyer. Brooks nodded slightly, as if granting a request already too late to matter. Good, Brooks said. You'll need one. An agent stepped forward with handcuffs, different cuffs. He didn't slam them. He didn't twist arms. He didn't posture. Patrolman Cody Rains, the agent said evenly. You are being detained pending arrest for assault, unlawful restraint, and deprivation of rights under color of law. You have the right. Rains barked. No. No, wait. He tried to step away. The agent caught his arm with firm control and turned him. Rains's face contorted as his own wrists were pulled behind him. Careful, he yelped. You're hurting me. The agent's expression did not change. Stand still. The cuffs clicked shut. The sound was clean. Final. A few people in the crowd exhaled as if they'd been holding their breath for years. Rains's face twisted with rage and humiliation. He looked at Alana, eyes wild. You set me up, he spat. Elena's voice was quiet. You walked in and chose to do it. Brooks placed a hand lightly on Alana's back only for a moment, a grounding touch. Then he removed it as if even comfort needed discipline right now. We're not leaving, Brooks said to her. You're going to get examined. And you're going to file the report in writing. Every detail. Every word. Alana nodded. Her jaw clenched. I remember all of it. Pierce glanced at her. So do the cameras, she said. Rains was walked toward the unmarked car. His boots scuffed the pavement, no longer marching, now being guided. He craned his neck toward the watching hospital staff. You're all going to regret this, he shouted. You think this changes anything? You. His voice broke as the car door opened and he saw more agents inside, waiting. Not impressed. Not moved. The door shut, cutting his words in half. Silence moved in behind it. The winter air felt different, like pressure had released. But Brooks didn't relax. His eyes stayed on the scene like a man reading the next page before it turned. Where's his body cam footage stored? Pierce asked one of the agents. Department server, the agent replied. Auto upload when docked. Unless. Pierce's gaze sharpened, unless it was turned off. Brooks' expression didn't change, but something colder entered it. Check his camera status now, he ordered. Another agent approached the cruiser, leaned in, and glanced at the body cam. It's on, the agent reported. But there's a red indicator memory nearly full. Could have been manipulated. Pierce nodded. We'll subpoena all logs, upload records, docking times, any edits, chain of custody. Brooks looked toward the hospital doors and his history. Complaints, use of force reports, every civil claim, every internal memo. The security guard who had hesitated earlier stepped forward, swallowing hard. Officer Rains, he's known, the guard admitted. Shame colored his voice. We've had incidents. He comes in here, pushes people around. We call the precinct and they say he's handling it. So we back off. Pierce's eyes narrowed. Get me a written statement. The guard nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. Alana looked at him, and the guard couldn't hold her gaze. A nurse who had been crying in the lobby stepped closer, voice trembling. He threatened me, she said. He hit my phone. I thought he'd arrest me if I spoke. Pierce's tone softened slightly. You're speaking now. The nurse nodded, tears falling. I have it on video. Part of it. I can send it. Brooks watched Alana as she took in the faces of her co-workers. He didn't speak for her. He didn't turn the moment into a speech. He simply stayed near, a quiet wall that told everyone she is not alone. Inside the hospital, Alana moved down the hallway toward occupational health with a slow, controlled gait. The adrenaline had started to fade. Pain crept in like a tide. A doctor waited for her, eyes full of fury contained by professionalism. We'll document everything, he promised. X-rays, photos, full charting. Alana nodded. Use the exact language, she said. No soft words. The doctor's jaw tightened. We won't. Brooks walked beside her, hands in his coat pockets, posture steady. His presence drew eyes. People moved aside instinctively, then stared, stunned, as recognition spread. But he didn't acknowledge the stares. He looked ahead, focused on procedure, on consequence. In a small exam room, Alana sat on the paper-covered table. Her wrists were photographed, her shoulder examined. Her breath caught when the doctor lifted her arm, and she squeezed her eyes shut for a second, refusing to let pain take her dignity. Brooks stood near the door, silent. Pierce stepped into the room after a quiet knock, holding a slim folder. I've spoken with the U.S. Attorney, Pierce said. They're opening a civil rights case. We are requesting immediate suspension of his police powers pending charges. He'll be placed on administrative leave within the hour. Brooks nodded. Good. Pierce's eyes went to Alana's wrists. And his department? Pierce didn't need to finish the question. The department was a body that protected itself. Brooks's voice stayed flat. If they try to bury it, we dig deeper. Alana spoke without looking up. They will. Brooks' eyes sharpened, but his tone remained controlled. Then we don't stop at him. In the next hours, the hospital transformed into a controlled storm. Agents moved through hallways with evidence bags and chain of custody forms. IT staff were escorted to server rooms. Security cameras were sealed, their footage mirrored and hashed. Witnesses were interviewed one by one in quiet offices, their voices shaking as they realized their words would finally matter. Outside, local news vans arrived, drawn by whispers and sirens. Reporters stood in the cold, breath visible, cameras pointed at the entrance. A hospital spokesperson attempted a statement, then stopped, swallowed by the gravity of what had happened and who was involved. Across town, the police department received calls it couldn't ignore. Internal affairs was forced into motion. The chief's office became a cage of phone lines and panic, and somewhere inside the department's walls, men and women who had watched Rains do this before felt their stomachs drop, knowing the old protections were about to be tested against federal heat. The next morning, Rains sat in an interview room with fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. His uniform was gone. He wore a plain gray sweatshirt. His badge and gun were in a plastic bag somewhere, tagged and cataloged like evidence. He sat across from two investigators, one federal, one state. A recorder sat on the table like an eye that didn't blink. Rains tried to look defiant. His knee bounced under the table. State your name, the investigator said. Cody Rains, he muttered. Badge number? He hesitated. It doesn't matter. It does, the investigator replied. Say it. Rains swallowed. 41722. The investigator nodded, then slid a printed complaint across the table. Rains glanced down and saw the words: assault, unlawful restraint, civil rights violations, tampering suspicion. His mouth went dry. You understand why you're here, the investigator said. Raina's voice rose. I want my lawyer. You'll get your lawyer, the investigator replied. But the record will reflect you were offered an opportunity to cooperate. Rains looked at the recorder, then away. The state investigator placed a tablet on the table and played the lobby video. Rainey's watched himself slap the phone, heard his own voice threaten a nurse. His face tightened. The federal investigator paused the clip right before Rains' hand hit the phone. "Why did you do that?" the investigator asked. Rains scoffed, trying to regain swagger. "She was interfering." "With what?" the investigator asked. "Specifically." Rains' mouth opened, closed. There was nowhere to go. No suspect, no emergency, no report. The investigator played another clip, the hallway camera showing Rains seizing Alana by the collar. Rainey's eyes flicked away as if disgusted at the video, or at being forced to see himself. "Is that lawful force?" the investigator asked. "She resisted," Rains snapped. The investigator's finger tapped the screen. "Where?" Rain's throat worked. She pulled away. "From you grabbing her," the investigator said. "In a hospital, while she was working." Rain's nostrils flared. "You're twisting it." "You twisted her arm," the investigator replied, voice calm. "We're documenting it." Over the next days, the case spread like fire through dry brush. A public records request unearthed prior complaints, some dismissed, some unfounded, some quietly paid out. A lawsuit from 3 years ago. A traffic stop that ended with a broken wrist and a settlement sealed by paperwork. Witnesses who had been afraid before started calling in, nurses from other hospitals. A janitor who'd seen him shove a homeless man in an ER hallway. A teenager who'd been cuffed too tight during a stop and told to learn respect. The pattern built itself into a shape that could no longer be denied. Internal Affairs tried to contain it. The union issued statements. The chief promised transparency. And then the FBI executed warrants. Not dramatic raids. Quiet, surgical. A lieutenant's email account was seized. A captain's phone. The department's use of force database logs. Evidence locker access records. The question stopped being, what did Rains do? And became, who covered it? Within 2 weeks, a deputy chief resigned. An internal affairs supervisor was placed under investigation for mishandling complaints. A sergeant was arrested for falsifying reports in an unrelated incident that surfaced under the scrutiny. The rod had been there. It had simply needed light. In the courthouse, the air was heavy and stale, thick with people who wanted to see a man fall. Alana sat in the front row with her co-workers behind her, nurses in plain clothes. Doctors. The hospital administrator. The security guard who had hesitated and now looked like he was trying to atone simply by being present. Her wrists had healed in color, but not in memory. When she clasped her hands together, her fingers paused briefly at the places the cuffs had bitten. Beside her sat Director Brooks, posture straight, face unreadable. Across the aisle, Rains sat at the defense table in a suit that didn't fit right. His hair was cut too neatly, like someone told him appearances mattered now. He stared forward, jaw clenched, eyes hard. But the hardness looked thin, like glass. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The courtroom settled again. Breath held. The prosecutor stood and began, voice sharp as a blade. "This case is not about a misunderstanding," she said. "It is about a man who used a uniform as permission to harm. He didn't make a mistake. He made a choice." Rains' attorney objected. The judge overruled. The prosecutor called witnesses. Video evidence played on a large screen. The moment Rains grabbed Alana's collar. The shove. The threats. The attempt to drag her into a police cruiser behind a hospital. Rains watched himself in silence. He looked down once, quickly, when the video showed Alana's face tightening in pain. Alana was called to the stand. She walked with measured steps, shoulders squared, eyes forward. She swore in, voice steady. When she sat, her hands rested calmly on the wooden rail, fingers lightly intertwined. The prosecutor's questions were straightforward. Alana's answers were precise. "Did you obstruct an investigation?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Alana said. "I asked for procedure. I asked for clearance. I asked him to respect patient care." "Did you resist arrest?" "I did not strike him. I did not try to run. I pulled away when he grabbed me by the collar," Alana said. "I told him to let go." "And what did he do?" Elena's eyes stayed on the prosecutor, not the defendant. "He escalated. He shoved me. He forced my arm behind me. He cuffed me. He threatened me. He dragged me through the hospital in front of patients and staff. The prosecutor's voice softened slightly. How did it feel? Alana's throat tightened, just briefly. Then her voice steadied again. It felt like I was being punished for existing in front of him, she said. It felt like he knew no one would stop him. Her co-workers behind her sat rigid, tears in some eyes. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination, voice slick. Mrs. Brooks, he began. Alana's head turned slightly, and her eyes met his without warmth. It's Dr. Brooks, the attorney corrected himself quickly, then smiled like it was accidental. You're married to an extremely powerful man, aren't you? Alana didn't move. Yes. So when this happened, you had the ability to bring federal agencies down on a local officer, he said, leaning in. Isn't it possible you exaggerated what happened? Alana's lips parted slightly. Her voice was soft, lethal in its calm. There were cameras, she said. There were witnesses. There were bruises documented by physicians. If the truth was on his side, he wouldn't be sitting over there. The defense attorney's smile faltered. He tried another angle. You work for the Inspector General as well, he said. You understand that officers must act quickly under pressure. Alana's gaze flicked briefly toward Rains, then back. Then he should have handled pressure without assaulting a nurse, she said. The judge watched, expression stern. The defense attorney stepped back, frustrated. The prosecutor called the hospital administrator, the nurse whose phone was slapped, the security guard. Each spoke of fear. Each spoke of the way Rains carried himself like a man who expected submission. The prosecutor then called an expert on police procedures. The expert described what lawful detention looked like, when force was justified, what de-escalation required. Then he looked at the screen and said, "This is not procedure. This is abuse." The words landed in the courtroom like a door locking. Finally, the prosecutor called Director Brooks, not as a dramatic climax, but as a final, controlled wait. Brooks took the stand with the same measured calm. He didn't talk about being a director. He didn't invoke power. He described what he saw. He described his wife's bruises. He described the calmness in her voice when she told him what happened. The calmness of a professional who understood the difference between emotion and documentation. The prosecutor asked, "Did you instruct anyone to fabricate evidence?" Brooks' eyes were steady. "No." "Did you instruct anyone to target Officer Rains because of personal anger?" "No," Brooks said. "I instructed them to preserve evidence." The defense attorney's cross-examination attempted to provoke him. "Director Brooks," he said, voice edged, "isn't it true your position intimidates people into agreeing with you?" Brooks looked at him for a long moment, then answered in a tone that held no heat. "Evidence doesn't get intimidated," he said. The defense had nothing after that. When closing arguments began, the prosecutor stood and pointed to the screen. "He turned his body to block a camera," she said. "That is consciousness of guilt. He knew what he was doing was wrong, and he tried to hide it." She turned toward the jury. "And even if there were no cameras," she said, "even if there were no federal credentials, even if there were no Director Brooks, this would still be a crime. Because her body is not his property. Her job is not his obstacle. Her existence is not his provocation." The jury listened, faces hardening. The defense argued it split-second decisions, stress, misinterpretation. But the video didn't show split seconds. It showed prolonged control. It showed escalating cruelty. It showed choice. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. When they returned, the courtroom stood again as the foreperson read the verdict. Guilty. 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 On each count, the word hit with the same finality. Rains' face tightened, then cracked. His shoulders slumped slightly, like the suit had become too heavy to hold up. His attorney whispered urgently. Rains barely nodded. The judge looked down at him, eyes severe. "You were entrusted with authority," the judge said. "You used it as a weapon." She paused, letting silence press on him. "This court has watched the footage," she continued. "It did not show restraint. It did not show professionalism. It showed contempt." The judge's voice lowered, deliberate. "Your badge did not make you powerful. It made you responsible," she said. "And you treated that responsibility like permission." She announced the sentence: prison time, not probation. A permanent felony record. Decertification, a federal conviction that would follow him forever. As the judge spoke, Raines's breathing turned shallow. He stared ahead, blinking fast. When the bailiff approached, Raines flinched. The hand on his arm wasn't violent. It didn't need to be. It was the hand of consequence. Raines stood shakily as the bailiff guided him toward the side door. He turned his head once toward the gallery, eyes searching. No one looked away. No one lowered their gaze. Alana sat still, hands clasped, eyes forward. She did not smile. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply watched a man learn that power has an end. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. The state attorney general held a press conference alongside federal officials. They announced a broader inquiry into the department, use of force patterns, civil rights violations, falsified reports. A hotline was set up for complaints. Oversight measures were imposed. Officers were suspended pending review. A community that had learned to swallow its anger began to speak. At Mercy General, staff gathered in the break room after shift change. The air smelled of coffee and exhaustion. No one laughed loudly, but their shoulders looked different, less hunched. The young nurse whose phone had been slapped sat with her hands wrapped around a cup, eyes still red. "I thought no one would care," she whispered. The administrator shook his head slowly. "We should have cared sooner," he said. The security guard stared at the floor. "I froze," he admitted. "I froze because I thought I'd lose my job." Alana sat at the table with her coworkers, her wrists covered by soft bandages. Her shoulder was taped under her shirt. Pain sat in her body like a reminder, but her voice was calm. "Freezing is what they rely on," she said. "Silence, isolation, people thinking they're alone." Her coworkers nodded, swallowing emotion. Director Brooks stood in the doorway, not entering, giving her space. His gaze moved across the room, taking in faces, memorizing them the way he memorized facts and briefings. When Alana's eyes met his, he gave a small nod. Later, in the quiet of their home, Alana stood at the sink washing her hands as if she could scrub the day off her skin. The water ran hot. Her hands moved slowly. Brooks stood behind her, not touching her, giving her the choice. Alana turned off the faucet and looked at her reflection for a long moment, then spoke softly. "He would have done it even if he weren't you," she said. Brooks' voice was low. "Yes, and he did it because he thought he could." Brooks nodded once. "Yes." Alana's jaw tightened. "They always pick places where they think people won't fight back." Brooks' eyes were steady, and they rely on the world being too tired to respond. Alana exhaled, slow. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, not from relief, from the weight finally shifting. In the weeks that followed, nurses at Mercy General walked the halls with a little more certainty. Patients' families watched officers differently. Officers in the city felt eyes on them in places they hadn't before. Some resented it. Some adjusted. Some quit. But the system, forced into scrutiny, began to change in ways it could not quietly undo. Because this time, the evidence had been preserved. The witnesses had been heard. The consequences had been public. And the man who believed a badge made him untouchable learned the truth in a courtroom under fluorescent lights, surrounded by people who did not bow. Authority without accountability had met its limit, and it did not get to negotiate.